Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Fritz. I'm an assistive technology specialist and a speech language pathologist. I'm going to do a training today about data collection. And let me share my screen with you. All right. Today we are going to talk about environmental communication teaching and data collection. We have some learning objectives. We want to make sure that we define environmental communication teaching, ECT, review activity-based objectives, review data collection forms, provide some examples of how to collect data, and discuss descriptive feedback in its relationship to natural cues. So, ECT, or Environmental Communication Teaching, is a set of strategies to support the implementation of AAC system usage. A systems change model that supports staff teams over time. An adult learning model that incorporates state-of-the-art professional development requirements. A way to increase the focus on communication in classroom, community, home situations, and thereby assist all students in meeting English language arts standards. So I think you all will agree that ECT is a completely different way to think about how you're approaching your students, how you're eliciting communication by them using their AAC system. So let's keep going. Activity-based objectives. This was the heart and soul of ECT. It was really thinking about what is that activity that is very motivating for the student? What activity do we do on a daily basis, or at least 3 times a week? Something that they're very familiar with, where you're not so much worried about teaching new vocabulary as you are using familiar vocabulary to elicit more comments, more requests, more communication from your student. The objective is usually going to start off with what's that environmental cue, or what's that natural cue that's going to happen first that is going to help elicit that particular communication from your student. And we want to be very specific. So when the snack items are placed on the counter and the teacher says, "Time for snack," the student will say, "I want goldfish." Or the student will say, "What do we have?" So we're looking for what do we have to put in place to get the student to do a particular thing. And it also looks at what vocabulary items or messages will we need. So you think ahead of time, okay, if we're having snack, what words am I going to need? I want, I need, may I have, goldfish, cookies. What are those words that I'm going to need? And then how am I going to represent them? Am I going to use a board maker picture communication symbols approach? And does the student have a device that may have touch chat on it or Proloquo and they're using symbol sticks? So you want to know ahead of time what symbol representation. And then finally, how are you displaying this? Once again, are you going to use a communication board? Are you going to use picture symbols in the room? Are you using a communication device? So it's important to know all of those things before you start. It makes doing the activity so much easier. So data collection. We have 3 different forms available to you, and each one looks at gathering the data differently. So let's look at the first one. The first one, ECT Behavior Checklist. You can see at the top of the form, you're getting some demographics. Who's the student? Who's the adult? What's the activity? Are we large group, small group? That type of information. And then you're looking at the adult's behavior in this, because as we know, it's not all about the student. ECT professional development is really about the adult. So what's the physical arrangement of the room? How many times did they pause? How many open questions, partial prompts, MANs, full model? Were there too many yes and no questions? Did they give descriptive feedback and reinforcement? And then you look at student behaviors. How often are they initiating? Through AAC, through their own voice, or through gestures? And did they respond to those yes and no questions if they were asked? So when we look at filling this out, you can see for physical arrangement, in this particular one, table, instructor across from the students. And then you're going to just take tally marks to see how many pauses, how many open-ended questions. And then finally, tally marks for the student's behavior. So that's one of the choices. I do like this checklist because it really does look at the adult behaviors and not just at the student behaviors. Our second form is the ECT ABO, Activity-Based Objective Data Record Form. What this one allows you to do is write all the objectives that are going to happen in that particular activity. So for example, let's look at a bigger version of this. We're going to put our dates across the top. We are going to put our objectives over to the left. And then as we complete that activity on a particular date, we're going to decide whether it was plus for independent, OP, open question, PP, partial prompt, M was a FN was full model. Now note, at some point, we had physical prompt here, and we have taken out hand over hand when we're doing communication routines with our students. So I've crossed that off the list. And then we put the data in as we take it over all of those different sessions. I like this one because sometimes you may not be repeating the same objective over and over again. You may have different objectives, so this allows you to put the different objectives in your chart. Then finally, we have Elise Prompt's data sheet that I revised for ECT. We've been using this data sheet for many, many years in Palm Beach County. Let's take a closer look at it. Okay, so up at the top, we're going to fill in the student's name. We're going to write that ABO objective. Now, this one really lends itself for one objective. So, for example, if you were trying to get a repeated request for food or napkins or things of that nature, you could have one ABO objective. Then the activity is snack, and the materials, we're going to use a snack core fringe board. Over here, you have your key. I is for independent. That's if they do it after the environmental or natural cue. I use the Q for open-ended question. PP for partial prompt. That's when you're giving the choices. MAND, if you're looking for them to give you more than that one-word answer because you know they're beyond that. F for full model. Then you put in your dates. And then you can see over here, I have circled how they did for opportunity number 1. They needed a full model. Opportunity 2, they needed a full model. And then they jumped up to some partial prompts, back to a full model, so on and so forth. And finally, towards the end, they received independence in their ability to request after just a natural cue or an environmental cue. So these are the 3 workshops available to you to take data when you're doing a daily routine or activity where you're using ECT strategies. I wanted to talk a little bit about descriptive feedback. So we know that we always want to provide descriptive feedback to our students, more than just good job, never try again, and giving them specific information. But what I want you to think about is descriptive feedback as you're going through a particular activity may become your next natural cue. So for example, student requests a juice box. So they've pointed to juice box, or they have activated a communication device to say juice box, and you provide descriptive feedback. You said juice, want juice. Here's your juice. So you pointed to juice, you expanded their utterance to show them how they could say want juice, and then you gave them their juice. When you gave them their juice, you gave it to them in a difficult to open package. So what happens is, here's your juice, becomes the natural cue, and the difficult to open package is your environmental cue. So just to recap, these were our learning objectives for today. We defined ECT, Environmental Communication Teaching. We reviewed the activity-based objective form. We reviewed the 3 data collection forms we have, and we talked about how to use them. Then we looked at descriptive feedback and its relationship to a natural cue, and the idea that your descriptive feedback that you give to the student may be your next natural cue. So I thank you for your time today. And if you have any questions, please email me at colleen.fritz@palmbeachschools.org. Have a great day. Bye-bye.